It was the year 1975, in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Sacramento, California. The air was thick with a strange stillness that didn't seem to belong. A dark cloud hung over the streets, and even the dogs stopped barking at night. No one knew it yet, but a shadow, an evil presence, was lurking among them. A man, ordinary by day, would transform when the sun dipped below the horizon. A man who walked among them, invisible, yet closer than anyone ever imagined. They called him the East Area Rapist, but no one knew his name. He was just a whisper in the dark, a nightmare that took form only in the deepest, most silent corners of people's minds, but the nightmare was real. Clara Reynolds had always felt safe in her home. It was a modest little house on a quiet street. She lived with her husband, Greg, and their 2 young children. One night, she was alone, putting the children to bed, when something happened that chilled her to the bone. The doorbell rang. She opened the door to find no one there. Nothing but the cold night air and the faint rustling of leaves. Strange. She thought she had heard footsteps outside, but she dismissed it as nothing. As she closed the door, she felt it, a shiver crawling down her spine. A fleeting shadow passed across the window. It was too late when she realized what it meant. He was watching. Days later, another house on the street was broken into. But this time, the man didn't just steal from them. He was different. He had a sick, twisted desire. A hunger for power. Clara's neighbors, the Johnsons, didn't hear anything that night. Just like everyone else, they thought it was another peaceful evening. But inside their home, something terrible happened. He tied up the husband, forced the wife to stay still, and then did the unthinkable. By the time the police arrived, there was nothing left but the echoes of the victim's screams in the walls. No fingerprints, no traces, just the feeling that something terrible had been there. The terror spread across the city like wildfire. Every night, someone else's life would be shattered. He would strike at random. No warning. No pattern, at least that's what the police thought. He'd enter homes in the dead of night, always after the couples had gone to bed. He loved the fear in their eyes. The way they trembled. The way they begged. Sometimes, he'd leave behind a message, a note written in crude handwriting, taunting the police. "I'll be back," it would say. "I know you're watching," but no one could catch him. He was a ghost. It wasn't enough for him to break in and leave. The terror deepened, took a darker turn. He began to kill. Not all at once, but one by one. Like a predator picking off his prey, the Petersons were the first to die. That night, the world stood still. 2 gunshots rang through their home. Police arrived at the scene and found their bodies sprawled across the living room floor. His signature remained: tie up the man, force the woman to watch, and then kill them both in cold blood. But as soon as the murder was done, he disappeared. Without a trace, the police were desperate. They had nothing. No physical evidence, no motive, no suspects. Just the gruesome aftermath. The only clue was the feeling, a sense of dread that haunted the entire city. The residents were terrified, locking their doors tighter every night, glancing over their shoulders during the day. But it didn't matter. He was already inside their homes, but detectives weren't giving up. They looked at every lead, every scrap of evidence, every witness. But it all led nowhere. His trail grew colder with every passing day. They never found him. Years passed. The killer's pattern began to stretch beyond Sacramento. He moved to Southern California, terrorizing even more families. And still, there was no clue. Then, in the mid-2000s, as the world changed, so did the way police investigated. A new tool emerged: DNA technology. The police took another look at the old case files, everything. They gathered DNA from the crime scenes. They uploaded it to a genealogy website, where people searched for relatives. And there, in a pool of millions, they found a match. The man they were looking for had been hiding in plain sight for decades. His name was Joseph James DeAngelo. A former police officer. A man who had served the law while secretly breaking it in the most horrific way possible. The police caught him in 2018, after they found a match between his DNA and the samples left at the crime scenes. He was arrested. The man who had caused so much fear was now standing before them, just another aging man, with no remorse in his eyes. What drove him to do it? Was it just a sick, twisted lust for power? DeAngelo later confessed. He had a deep need to dominate, to control. The thrill of stalking, of terrorizing, and finally killing his victims was the only thing that gave him satisfaction. He had been driven by an urge to hurt. It was almost as if he believed he was above everyone else, entitled to take their lives. He had nothing to lose, and for years, he played the perfect game. Joseph James DeAngelo pled guilty to 13 murders and dozens of rapes. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but even though he was behind bars, the fear he left behind never truly disappeared. People still talk about him. Still remember the terror he brought to their city. His ghost will forever haunt the streets of Sacramento, and the question remains, as it always will, how did he get away with it for so long? How did he manage to live among us, unseen, for so many years? The answer may never be clear. But one thing is certain, the Golden State Killer's reign of terror is over, but the fear still lingers.